Hello, I'm Kihn. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Music. I was abandoned on the streets of Saigon 46 years ago. This presentation is a story of adoption and of the voices that emerge from assimilationist practices, including those promulgated by an American music education system in which students' ethnic or racial identities may be uncelebrated and unsung. In February, Pop Asia host Andy Chu reflected that, quote, for many Asian-born Australians, Vietnamese Australians included, the feeling of estrangement and a need to shed their otherness to fit in is a common story. Learning to embrace one's heritage is a personal journey, and for some, music can act as their guiding compass, unquote. The same holds true for me, and I hope to discover how Chu's statement might resonate for Viet and Viet American youth who wrestle with the conundrum of living within and outside geophysical and emotional spaces that are situated somewhere between here and there, home and not home. International adoption is discussed by demographers and anthropologists alike. Although their approaches to adoption studies differ, scholars agree that adoption is a complex social process that implicates nations in the trade of children. Terms like supply and demand and push and pull factors work to objectify children, which risk likening them to goods for sale. Next slide. And while I'd like to think that adoption practices, as the 1993 Hague Convention on Intercountry Adoption states, quote, are made in the best interests of the child, unquote, and what the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child notes as providing the child with a, quote, family environment in an atmosphere of happiness, love, and understanding, unquote. Adopted children ultimately become what Jessica Lina Weaver calls a minoritized community within a dominant society. Gabriela Miska follows up by saying that criticisms of intercountry adoption, noting that adopted children's identities are lost and replaced by a new name and a new nationality when they are assimilated to their adoptive country. Slide 3. Richard H. Weil was the first to classify international adoption as a form of migration because adoption conforms to particular conditions such as the supply of children by sending countries and demand by receiving countries. Lina Weaver tells us that quiet migration is termed as such because adoption, A, occurs in small numbers compared to labor migrations or refugee displacement, and B, it is about children who are not self-agentic and cannot speak for themselves. Next slide. Perhaps the price of my abandonment and subsequent adoption is the loss of my mother tongue, the Teng Viet. Forced loss of voice, as I argue in my recent book, is critiqued by Disney critics who show how princesses are oftentimes the victims of what I like to call vocal theft by villains such as Ursula from The Little Mermaid. It was not until my first visits to Vietnam that I realized how I might be a victim, but more importantly, that I have another voice, one that may have been taken away by what music education philosopher Estelle Jorgensen would call a profoundly political process. The political, social, and emotional price of becoming American became my silence, my assimilation. Yet, I remain hopeful. The path ahead for music education is looking brighter. Christopher Kayari recent study of Asian American music professionals' experiences of school music is evidence that the music education field is just beginning to engage with Asian identities through songs and stories of immigrants and quiet migrants. More specifically, Tina Huynh, the only other Vietnamese American music education professor, aside from me, seeks to broaden musical diversity by studying the relevance of Vietnamese songs in American music education. Lastly, returning to Andy Chu's statement about music being a guiding compass, I hope that my own study of the Teng Viet and Viet songs like folk musics, V-pop, and Viet rap will recalibrate my musical compass, and in so doing, set a course towards self-healing, as well as making space and place for other Asian and Asian Americans to reclaim their voices. Thank you.